Are we in control of our own lives? Is destiny real? And if it is it up to us? Or is it up to the gods? Or is it up to random chance? These are questions that have haunted literature for thousands of years. 429 years before Christ, Athenian playwright Sophocles wrote a story called Oedipus Rex. This is the story of a man who rebelled against the fate given him by the gods, a fate to kill his father and marry his mother. Upon hearing this grim prophecy, he leaves his home thinking that if he's not around his parents, the prophecy can't come true. Unfortunately for him, the play reveals that the people who raised him were not his biological parents, and over the course of the play, he did indeed come to kill his father and marry his mother, both times unknowingly. The supreme irony of the play being that if he had not heard the prophecy and tried to rebel against it, it would not have come true. To the ancient Greeks, prophecies were inviolable and fates were etched in stone. And all that brings us to Attack on Titan. I'm going to be spoiling pretty much everything in this video, so if you haven't seen Attack on Titan yet, it's been a year and a half, just go watch the series and then come back to this video. Anyways, in modern times, the idea of prophecy has shifted somewhat. Bad prophecies are often made for villains predicting their downfall. For instance, Lord Voldemort hears the prophecy that Harry is going to defeat him, so he tries to kill Harry as a baby. Turns out he shouldn't have done that because in doing so, he not only gave Harry the power he needed to kill him, he also gave him the motivation, which is what Dumbledore tells Harry later on. The prophecy isn't what's driving him forward, it's simply observing that Harry and Voldemort want to kill each other. Other times, when heroes get a bad prophecy, they are often able to avoid it. The most famous example of this is Terminator 2, in which Sarah Connor destroys Cyberdyne before it can rise to create the Terminators. I still think they should have ended with that movie and not undid it with a bunch of sequels. However, we do still get stories about heroes that receive grim fates. And today, I'm talking about a story about a young man who receives a vision that he will kill a tremendous amount of people in order to save those he cares about and protect his homeland. A story about a man who grapples with this fate, trying to avert it, but ends up bringing it to fruition. I am, of course, talking about Frank Herbert's Dune. Dune is the story of the son of a duke named Paul Atreides, whose entire family is slaughtered by their rivals, the Harkonnens. To fight back, Paul organizes an army of desert-dwelling fighters called the Fremen, assuming the mantle of their prophesied messiah, the Kwisatz Haderach. In doing so, he's able to avenge himself on the Harkonnens and take control of the Empire, but ends up unleashing a holy crusade to rage across the galaxy. Similarly, in Attack on Titan, the main character Eren Yeager sees a vision of himself unleashing the Rumbling, an army of colossal titans to flatten the world outside of Eldia. Now that you've got the synopsis, there's one crucial difference between these two stories that makes one of them work and the other one fail. And that is that, in Dune, we get to see Paul's vision when he has it. Whereas in Eren's case, we don't learn about this vision until almost halfway through Season 4. This creates three major problems for Season 4, all of which can be primarily addressed by going back to the end of Season 3 and showing us Eren's vision when he had it. Number 1. It robs Eren of his agency. To make a compelling character, they often need to be striving for something, or at the very least, they need to be capable. One of the reasons why the Saw franchise has lasted so long is that, despite its gruesome nature, Jigsaw John always gives his victims a way out. The films wouldn't nearly be so compelling if the traps were just automatic death sentences. Likewise, it shouldn't be the case that Eren automatically has to do whatever the prophecy tells him. It's one thing to have a story where you can't fight fate, but it's completely another thing to have a story where the main character doesn't really even try. Eren tells Armin that he tried to change things from time to time, but everything played out the same way it did in his vision, but we're never shown any actual instances of this, which violates another rule of storytelling, which is show don't tell. Eren also tells Armin that he lost the ability to distinguish the past from the future, which, for that to happen to the main character, is extremely unsatisfying. That basically tells us that Eren died at the end of Season 3, and the character we've been watching this entire season is basically a walking corpse. If your story is about an unescapable fate, then your character should be trying everything in their power to avoid it. That way, it drives home the point that it's inevitable. Number 2. It robs the story of tension. Alfred Hitchcock created one of the most famous examples of how to build suspense in a film. Imagine underneath your desk or your bed there is a bomb about to go off in 5 minutes, and instead of doing anything about it, you're here watching this dumb shitty YouTube video that's recorded in a closet. Now imagine an audience is watching you, and they are begging you on the edge of their seats to get off your ass and deal with the bomb, but you don't know it's there, and the clock is slowly ticking down. This is the situation we have in Attack on Titan, except the roles have been reversed in a way that doesn't make sense. In this case, the character knows that there's a bomb about to go off at the end of the season, the bomb being the rumbling, but the audience doesn't. It's like suspense, but in reverse. In the previous segment, I suggested that you could fix Season 4 by focusing on Eren and his struggles to avoid the rumbling. But another thing you could do while changing even less of the plot is to focus on the other characters and build up the suspense because they don't know about the rumbling while the audience does. Season 4 spends an inordinate amount of time on flashbacks and side quests, which make the plot feel pretty meandering. I spent a lot of my time watching, wondering, what exactly are we doing here? Why is this important? Giving us the suspense of the rumbling could justify a whole lot, if not all of this. We already know that character and story arcs have to be wrapping up because this is the final season, but having the rumbling bearing down on us would give it way more urgency. We would be asking ourselves, what can these characters do before the end of the world? And will they be able to stop the end of the world? Another minor problem that I would address here is that Annie is brought back into the series way too late. Talk about show don't tell, Annie basically explains her entire character the episode that she's brought back and then conveniently runs into the other characters so that the rest of the plot can happen. Number 3. The show doesn't really dive into the questions it raises about fate, prophecy, and free will. This is more of a missed opportunity than it is a flaw, but it's a big one. The thing about Eren is that there are hints that he has more free will than he assumes. For instance, the scene where Eren saves a pickpocket about to be lynched in an alley. Eren knows that he's supposed to save this kid because that's what he saw in his visions. However, he thinks that it's kind of ridiculous because this kid's going to die in the rumbling anyways, so he turns and walks away. And then realizes that his conscience won't let him abandon a kid to die, and so he goes back and saves him anyways. We can clearly see that Eren had a choice not to follow the visions here, and yet he followed them anyways. Given this scene, is it really true that Eren was simply following the whim of the visions, or were the visions simply an observation of the choices that he himself felt that he had no choice but to make? And then there's the question of, do we even choose our personalities? If we're the product of genetics in our environment, then what choice do any of us really have? Of course, any thinking human being who's ever had to choose between two conflicting desires can obviously observe that we have free will, but if we were purely a product of our environment, then who is to say that a prophecy couldn't accurately foretell exactly what we would do and what the consequences would be? These are questions the show could have gone into if we'd simply seen what Eren saw when he kissed Historia's hand. I love Attack on Titan, but it's got some major flaws. Anyways, until next time, this is Apollyon Analysis.